What's going on, guys? C2 Wrestling Podcast back again. We are firing away. Consistency is key. Chris and Chris, Snowden and CTD podcast number 4. I don't get how these podcasts like keep count. This is like, I think
Don't
our
get it.
fourth. I can't even remember.
Yeah, don't get it. The videos we've done in between the podcast too. This could be podcast 4. It could be podcast 45. I've lost count, to be honest with you. We also love talking wrestling, so we do it so much that it feels like we're always kind of podcasting. We talk a lot of wrestling, kind of blends in. But we got a lot to get into. It's been an interesting week in wrestling, but it's also been just an interesting week in general. I got to ask you a question to start off this podcast. Would you prefer to film wrestling content for the YouTube channel, or would you rather go to jury duty?
Oh my God. I if you guys noticed when Snowden did the solo video on Monday after Raw, it was because I was flying home. Now, there's a difference between having jury duty and having 3 hours plus of flight delays, getting home at 1 in the morning, and then having to wake up at like 6:30 for jury duty. What
Cool.
an like I fully get why people think it's awful. I will say when I was there, I was kind of like, all right, well, I'm here now. I'm just sitting on my phone the entire time. To be honest, I was just thinking about this podcast and watching TikToks
Yeah.
the entire time I was waiting. But I can firmly say I would much rather watch like the worst wrestling match ever than have to go to jury duty. And thankfully I was only in there for I don't know, 3.5, 4 hours, and I'm done now for a few years or whatever it is. But I'll switch it back to
Oh,
you. Would you
okay.
rather go to jury duty or get an injection in your ankle that we talked about in episode 1? Your broken freaking ankle that you're going on. You're still getting treatments on.
uh,
A great
yeah.
callback to the first podcast.
Yeah. Big call back to the first podcast. I've been working with a little bit of a bum ankle for the last few weeks. And I got some results back today. I had to get an injection in my ankle,
A
what they
lethal
would call
injection.
a lethal, yeah, lethal injection, what they would call a partially torn ligament in my ankle. But you don't need to stand up to podcast. So it's all right. We're podcasting. Screw jury duty. I've never been summoned. Hope I don't get summoned. If I ever do, it better be Paul Bear with the urn, summoning me to jury duty like it would the Undertaker to the ring. Better be something cool. But it's a crazy week. Jury duty sucks. What doesn't suck is wrestling.
Oh,
The WWE. It's on fire right now.
the only good part about the delays I had
Mm.
were it was like over an hour I was delayed while on the plane, just waiting to take off. Thankfully, humble brag, always fly Delta, got the live TV going. So I was able to watch Raw, which was beautiful. Granted, most of the time I didn't have my headphone in because I was also watching the Mets game. Um, but it was nice to still be able to catch it. And that's exactly where not just wrestling, but specifically WWE is, where it's like I've always been a diehard fan. I very rarely miss a show to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always keeping up with it. But if I have the chance where I'm in a situation like on the plane and there's live TV, it's going on. Even the
Yeah.
Mets will go on a different monitor, whatever. Or last Friday, when we did our show, I was at a party. I was still keeping up with SmackDown, watching some of it on my phone, then
Mm-hmm.
caught the last 10 minutes and was able to talk about it when we did a post video. Wrestling, it's can't miss TV, a lot of it right now.
Yeah, it really is. And again, we were saying this in a previous video as well. Even the stuff I miss, I got to go back and watch. I'm desperate to search these clips up on Twitter, rewind the TV, go back and catch what I didn't see. And it's at all angles again. SmackDown, Raw, NXT, all of it right now is must watch wrestling.
For sure. And we've been, grinding on videos, and there's more to come. This is
Mm,
dropping Thursday. Podcast drops every Thursday. We'll have some sort of SmackDown reaction, recap, whatever Friday. We got a special AEW video actually coming out on Saturday, our first ever AEW video. It's also the same night as All In. So maybe All In gives us something to talk about. No
mm,
guarantees there. And then we're right to Monday, and it is the final few days before Bash in Berlin. I mean, we are at the point where normally this time of year in wrestling, I believe it was Dave LaGreca who called it the fall of the fall. Normally, this is a little bit of a low point. SummerSlam finishes, football season starts to come back, and you kind of lose a bit of that stride. It's
Yeah.
not like that, especially with these overseas shows. Like,
Hmm.
we're going to have Bash in Berlin next Saturday, and then 4 or so weeks from that point, it's Bad Blood, which is shaping up to be a fantastic pay per view as well. And then shortly after that, you have a Saudi show. And then before you know it, it's Survivor Series and probably a War Games match. Like it is, there is no fall of the fall right now. It is every single week is must see.
Yeah, it's stacked. This time frame, you know, roughly post SummerSlam to the road to the Rumble, was always kind of like a buffer period. You know, there was always kind of nothing going on. But we got a lot of upcoming shows. There's a lot of great stuff. We got a lot of great feuds, rivalries going on right now, and I'm looking very forward to it. It is very much must see TV. There's nothing I want to miss. And it's got me in tune to even more wrestling. WWE is so good. It's got me watching everything I can watch right now. I just want to watch pro wrestling. But particularly speaking, there is a title right now that will be entering into a tournament. Or I'm sorry, not entering into a tournament. Number one contenders tournament, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Number one contenders tournament. Monday Night Raw, Bron Breakker, Intercontinental Champion, setting up a tournament of who knows what. We don't really know the bracket quite yet, but we can fantasize. We can come up with a tournament bracket, come up with our own style. So we kind of wanted to give that a shot for you guys. Come up with an Intercontinental bracket for Monday Night Raw. And I think there's a few avenues they could go. I really think it is a little filler just in consideration that you would imagine Braun is getting an IC title run for a bit. But I think a tournament is a great way to set it up. I think this is better than arguably having him just go right into a one-on-one feud right now with somebody. Do a tournament style way of getting him that rivalry.
If you're watching the video, I did absolutely just backhand my laptop and it almost
I
just
was
went to
trying to
the
let it
crack and
slide.
fall.
I was trying to let it slide.
Yeah, so if you're watching, you got to see that. If you're listening, you'll get to see my panic. But completely agree with you. It does have a little sense of filler, but if Bronson and Braun Strowman wasn't happening and Braun Strowman was going for Braun Breaker, that is a feud that doesn't need a tournament. That is a feud that starts the exact same way that Bronson's feud did. Braun Strowman just comes out, they have some sort of interaction, match gets made. With that being taken out, your next challenger, like, it needs to be established. You could do some random matchup of one on one, whatever, but you do a short little tournament. We're going to do an 8-man tournament. I'm assuming that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's anything bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, they've done a lot of these under the Triple H era for number one contenderships, whether it's a quick, like, double eliminator, like we saw with the tag titles on
Yeah.
SmackDown, 2 matches, the winners of the 2 matches face off, where it's like, you can't really call that a tournament. And then you have this. I prefer this for your weekly television show, and the prize is a number one contendership, and then it goes
Mm-hmm.
into a story. I know we just had the King of the Ring. Like, I'm not a fan of so many tournaments where it's like, this is for this trophy, this is for this cup, whatever. So, yes, somewhat filler, but also you're going to establish a true number one contender. That helps when you have this absolute beast that you're booking in Braun Breaker defending the title.
Absolutely. There's going to be absolute beasts in the tournament, too. These rosters are stacked right now. You can't possibly build a tournament without it being filled with contenders right now on Monday Night Raw. So, realistically, no matter who wins, is a great contender for Braun Breaker. But who's going to win? I'm not too sure. I think they could go a few ways. I do think an 8-man tournament makes sense. But like you were saying, we've seen some other types of tournaments under this Triple H era. There's been even, 3 single match brackets, and then that will lead into a triple threat for the number one contender. I can't even rule something like that out. Maybe we get 3 single matches, those winners face off in a triple threat. Who knows? They could go do a few ways. I think this is a little bit different than doing a gauntlet, and we've seen a few gauntlets lately, and I would prefer a tournament. It is off the back of King of the Ring a little bit, but the King of the Ring is maybe a placement tournament. Yeah, maybe we do that once a year, but this IC title tournament isn't a once a year thing. So it's okay coming off the back of King of the Ring, but I don't think we should get a US title tournament next month, though. I think they got to then hold off from here. But again, there's many avenues they can go. There's, I would say, 2 people I'd prefer to see Bron face. I imagine this match is going to be set up for Bad Blood. I don't know if it quite fits in the Berlin feud yet, Berlin pay-per-view. I think if they were to do it in Berlin this Monday, you would have to do like 3 singles matches, and then the main event would have to be a triple threat or something along those lines again. But I don't think they do that. I think they drag it out over 2 weeks. I hope they do as well, and it leads into Bad Blood.
I think it drags out probably over about 3 weeks. And
yeah,
to be honest, I think that's completely fine.
It's good.
And the title was just defended on the last 2 pay-per-views. We know the pay-per-views are only 5 to 6 title matches to begin with. Completely okay with it not being in Berlin. It's not like Bron Breakker's from Berlin or something like that.
Yeah.
Also have to remember, Bron Breakker billed from Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
He's from this area, went to Kennesaw State. He's got to be on
Gotta
Bad
get
Blood.
him. Gotta get him on Bad Blood.
Just looking at it, you had it Money in the Bank, you had it SummerSlam. Now I know some people will say, well, it's a title, it should be on every single pay-per-view. Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I do love how main event of Monday Night Raw, 2 out of 3 falls. The weekly show is now bigger, doing it that way.
Correct.
Now, when I filled out my tournament, and we're going to go through match by match, I tried to be as realistic, logical, and it's almost, I'm kind of looking at it, and I'd say I'm almost a little underwhelmed by what I did.
Okay, interesting.
But not in like a, this would be, I feel like it's the safe route, is what I should say.
Okay. I would say mine's the typical route.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit of what you would expect them to maybe kind of do. It's just very involved with what they got going on Monday Night Raw right now. I wouldn't say I really have any like maybe nothing like no crazy throwaway matches, nothing too outlandish, no universe mode stuff in here, I guess. But we'll see. I want to see how we line up. I want to see if we align on any sort of matches. Hell, we think pretty alike when it comes to wrestling. We might have the same tournament here.
I don't think we will.
Yeah, it's tough. That'd be tough.
It might be close, but I did leave a big name or 2 out. I will say that.
Okay.
And just for the fact of I don't have them winning. And so with that mindset, which they do often, if they're not going to win it, don't have them in it because it doesn't benefit them.
Agree. I left a couple names out for a similar reason. They're not going to win. Don't put them in.
So I think all of our matches probably are going to have some sort of backstory, or at least a majority of them. So I think going one by one is fine. And then obviously we'll have our finals, talk through the finals, who wins, and then talks through the feud between Bron Breakker and the potential winner. So I'll kick it back to you. Monday Night Raw this Monday.
Yeah.
First match of the Intercontinental Championship tournament. What are you doing?
First match, Intercontinental tournament. I think a lot of people are going to want to see in this bracket. Although, again, this is a guy that I don't think they would have quite win. But I think a lot of people are going to want to see Otis in the tournament. So I'm throwing Otis in that first match. But I'm putting him up against somebody that maybe wants to bring the Intercontinental title back to a bit of royalty. I think he's going up against Ludwig Kaiser.
Okay. Any specifics on why you match them 2 up?
So Ludwig goes over. I need Ludwig to go over somebody. You typically would have him especially go over a face. You could have him go over anybody, don't get me wrong, but he really is not the guy. He's such a heel that I don't need him going up against another heel. I needed a face that he can go over against. Get him to the next bracket. Had to go over Otis.
So my first match,
Mm-hmm.
similar but different.
Okay.
I too have Ludwig Kaiser in my first match.
Okay.
I feel like this is a perfect scenario to
Mm-hmm.
keep. I mean, he's getting plenty of TV time, which is great because I love Ludwig. He's been fantastic.
Fantastic.
So I also have him winning the first match. And again, this is a match we've already seen,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it puts a bow on the rivalry. Just 2 weeks ago, we saw the backstage segment between him and Sheamus, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of felt like things weren't done. Sheamus, guy needs the Intercontinental Championship for the Grand Slam, so it makes sense for him to be in. If there's anything better for a heel than to let down a babyface in their goal, it is this, where Ludwig faces Sheamus in round one, cheats his way to victory. He's already got the injured hand. You can play that into the
Mm-hmm.
story. It makes sense for both guys. It kind of puts a bow on what has become a multiple month rivalry because of Ludwig getting injured. But it finally, we can close that chapter of what has been fantastic matches between the two of them.
They have had some fantastic matches. And this is further reasoning on why I had Ludwig win this first match, but also go over Otis and not Sheamus, is because I too want to put a bow on that feud, Ludwig and Sheamus. But if you're going to put a bow on it, the true German has got to be on the Berlin card. You got to get him there. It's got to be a singles match between Sheamus and Ludwig, Bash in Berlin. That is a great filler match. Put it in between some titles. That would be fantastic, in my opinion. I think you do that by having Ludwig go over Otis. And then your other first match in the tournament, Sheamus versus Pete Dunne. And in here, I do still have Sheamus going over Dunne, but I think this is where you can maybe further that feud. And after this, Sheamus will go up against somebody else in the bracket. But I think Ludwig can then maybe cost Sheamus his shot. Sheamus then loses out of the tournament. That can then further their feud, getting that match on the Berlin card. But my second match following up Ludwig versus Otis would be Sheamus versus Pete Dunne. Sheamus goes over.
Okay, so you've got Sheamus, Pete Dunne, and you've got Ludwig Otis to start
Matches 1-1. Yep.
matches. First round. My first
Mm-hmm.
match was Sheamus, Ludwig. My next match, this is where I'm going to start to go to left field a little bit, and I want you to follow me. Now, this is how we would do it, keeping it realistic though. What I think would make perfect sense is Adam Pearce filling out this bracket, and he's watching, and he's the general manager of Monday Night Raw, and he sees two guys that have a bit of friction between them, more
Mm-hmm.
so from one side. It is very clear there is tension between Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. And Xavier Woods is starting to feel as if Kofi doesn't think he's as valuable. And although the rivalry with Cross seems to be done, it is done because Cross's work is done. He has already planted the seeds of doubt in Xavier Woods' mind.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier feels like an outcast. Xavier, you can see the tension. They've been going for it with the last few weeks of little things that are clearly getting to Xavier Woods. So you have Adam Pearce. He's making the bracket, and he says, Woods, I can clearly see it in your face. You're facing Kofi Kingston. If you think you truly are the
Mm-hmm.
guy that you're not being portrayed to be, this is your chance. Prove in the first round that you are the better member of the New Day. And they shake hands. It's one on one. Nothing, no interference. We are going to have a clean match. Better man will win. And Kofi Kingston beats Xavier Woods.
Okay. All right.
And that is what that Xavier has reached his breaking point. He knows he's better than Kofi. He knows Kofi isn't valuing him properly. They face off 1-1 and Kofi beats him. And now he's sick to his stomach. And that's what causes him to finally turn on Kofi Kingston. So Kofi will go on in the tournament. The turn doesn't happen the exact moment. You don't want to take away from the tournament itself, but
Mm-hmm.
you're enhancing that story while also moving someone on in the tournament. So
Okay.
my second match, Xavier Woods versus Kofi Kingston, with Kofi Kingston winning.
So, okay, that's great. I'm going to ask one question. Would that then put Kofi against Ludwig? Is that the next match?
Yes,
Okay, for the next second tier of the bracket. Okay.
correct.
So, New Day, Final Testament, all guys I kept out of the tournament. A little bit of a
Okay.
hot take, maybe. I think if you're gonna do it, if you're gonna put New Day or Final Testament in this tournament at all, that's the best way to do it. 100%, exactly what you just booked. I think even just you don't even need Final Testament. You just book New Day against New Day, puts Woods over the edge. That is absolutely the way to do it. But I don't think they're quite needed in the tournament yet. I don't know if the whole New Day turn, the Final Testament feud, is even IC title ready right now. Um, the match that I would have third is my kind of like filler match that would replace my Woods versus Kofi. Um, Two totally different superstars, fresh matchup. I want to see the veteran Rey Mysterio face the new guy on the block in Ilya Dragunov. I think that is a fantastic matchup. I think it's just two guys going at it, two guys that are obviously going to be over. Face versus face matchup, and that's okay. I do have the veteran Rey Mysterio going over here. I know that maybe isn't super great for Ilya, but he is in a similar boat that maybe Carmelo was in. I really don't think a loss hurts him at all, especially a loss to Rey Mysterio. I think it's okay. They would have a great matchup, and then I want to see Rey face Sheamus in the next tier. There's no real rivalry between Rey and Ilya, but I don't think every feud in this tournament, similar to my Ludwig and Otis match, has to be currently involved in a rivalry. I think you can keep New Day and Final Testament off of this card, off of this tournament, and there's still stuff to fill in around the tournament. This would then stretch this tournament 3 weeks, like we were kind of saying would be best. If you put every feud on the tournament, you almost can't stretch it that far. You have to invent new feuds. You can continue doing everything you're doing by having maybe one or two throwaway matches in this first bracket.
A little bit of a double spoiler here. Those two matches were the only two that have background stories to them. My
Mm-hmm.
next two are more so pairings of potential contenders. But my second thing, which is going to lead me to a question for you,
Mm-hmm.
I kept Ilya out,
Okay.
and I know I completely agree that him losing to Ray doesn't hurt him. He is, you know, he's almost nearing the point where he kind of just has to get on TV.
Mm-hmm.
For a 3 hour show, he really hasn't been on much. If you have that happen, which again, don't think it hurts him that bad. What is your next steps with Ilya?
Mm-hmm.
As we know, the end goal most likely would be him either facing Gunther at some point or facing Braun Breaker at some point for one of their titles when he really is on TV and a focal point. So, is there someone that you think would make sense for him after that to get him on TV?
Well, so I have an interesting take on Ilya, and I think he is in a spot where, as great as he is, and as much as I'd love to see a run from him, there could be a little change necessary, maybe a little bit of a heel turn incoming. And I think Rey Mysterio going over Ilya is fine because, again, it doesn't hurt Ilya. Him losing to anybody, especially a vet again, doesn't hurt him. But I think Ilya is the perfect person that you can set up to do this. New guy on the block. He's a beast. He's obviously insane. Gets a couple losses under his belt. Starts going crazy, losing his mind. Oh, he's got this power up kind of style to him, you know? As he's in the ring and he's getting beaten down, he seems to get stronger in his action and what he does. I think he's the guy you can get a couple losses under his belt and he can use it to come out on top type thing. Have him lose to a couple of good guys. I think you turn him heel. I realize it's a long run, maybe until there's another draft and things like that. But he's another guy that you have an opportunity as a heel to toss around to maybe a SmackDown, get him in a feud with LA Knight. Again, I try to steer away from the heel versus heel feuds. Ilya versus Gunther could be anything. That match is going to be fantastic. I'd rather not a heel Ilya face a heel Braun, to be fair. But I think there's opportunity there with Ilya to kind of go that deranged way and have him really just turn into an unstoppable force.
And one thing that we do have to kind of remember, I know it might just be more for a one-time moment or a partial thing, but SmackDown technically owes Raw 1 to 2 favors.
Yep.
They have Orton over on Raw going for the world title. They also had Theory and Waller come on to Raw, so they've got to let, SmackDown get a guy for something. Again, like we've said, big fans of the brand split don't want them to ever shy away from it, but they're
Correct.
finding ways logically to bend it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
where it's not a free agent pool or anything like that. So that is very possible where you could
Yeah.
have a guy like Ilya who almost feels directionless if he's not in this tournament or winning this tournament. That's kind of a route for him. And
Mm-hmm.
a feud with LA Knight would absolutely make sense if that were the case, because I think him versus LA Knight, if you go what you're saying with him losing a few weeks, whatever, him versus LA Knight then makes way more sense than him versus Braun Breaker or him versus Gunther.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and it's tough too, because you got guys like Andrade and Carmelo over in the mix on SmackDown. You don't want them to maybe lose their opportunity against LA Knight. But Ilya is somebody I do want to see in the mix. I think there's a few ways to do it. I think he falls into a similar realm where like Pete Dunne is right now, where they love him. They want to get him on the card, but there's just not really the space right now. And that's okay sometimes. Hopefully there's a space in a few months. Some pay-per-views go by. We get some stuff in there. Injuries to Tyler Bate hurt Pete Dunne. A little bit different. But, Dunne is great. They're all great. Ilya's great. But you just can't get everybody on the card sometimes.
So speaking of Pete Dunne, I'll go to my third match. And this is where I have him in. And this is where it does kind of feel not throwaway matches, but matches where I got some guys that could use that'll be on TV and make
Mm-hmm.
sense. So a little bit of a left field match. I went Pete Dunne versus The Miz. I
Okay.
think I
Yeah.
think with The Miz, obviously Bronson just whacked him. This would be
Mm-hmm.
one that happens on the following Raw, not this upcoming Raw.
Fair.
So, can sell the injuries that Miz
Mm-hmm.
sustained, whatever. Makes sense for Miz. This is arguably the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time. Gunther may have had the longest reign, but everyone, you know, our generation, the Miz is the IC champion.
Yeah.
That's the Intercontinental Champion.
Am
That's
I
the
am I
guy who
correct?
elevates.
One more to tie the most IC title runs?
Yes.
Yeah, right. I think
Yeah,
it
one
ties
more
Jericho.
or he's tied. I think it's one
It,
more.
I think it's one more to tie it. I could be wrong.
I
May
think
need
so.
one more to break it, but I think it's to tie,
Something like that. But I
which
mean,
he
he's up
deserves.
there.
He
Yes,
deserves it at a point.
absolutely. He's up there. I mean, some of the most memorable moments during his career were him as the Intercontinental Champion and him elevating that title. So him
Absolutely.
being in the tournament, just for starters, makes the most amount of sense. Now his opponent, Pete Dunne. I have them matched up, and I actually have Pete Dunne winning. Because
Fair.
I know Pete Dunne beat Trick Williams on NXT. What was it, last week? Or was that two
I
weeks ago?
believe. Uh who was it 2 weeks ago?
It might have been last week. Recently, he just
Sure.
beat Trick Williams. So he has some sort of win, but he's missing that, like, okay, this is a guy that you can respect isn't the proper word because it makes you think you were disrespecting
Mm-hmm.
him. You can kind of
Establish him.
credibility. That's the
Yeah.
word I'm looking for. Gives him the credibility going forward. He's got a first round match. Look, I know people say what you want about The Miz. This is a 2 time Grand Slam champion, one of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time, future Hall of Famer. Pete Dunne beating him in the first round It doesn't hurt the Miz. The Miz can lose literally to me tomorrow. He's still going in the Hall of Fame. It helps Pete Dunne a ton. And also, it's semi filler, semi not. You're still getting something out of this,
Hmm.
but it is more so neither of these guys were going to win my tournament, but I needed to have a match here, and you don't want to just have a throwaway match with throwaway guys. So my third match was Pete Dunne, The Miz.
I think that's a solid matchup. I do think that's a good way to establish some more credibility with Pete Dunne. He doesn't have to win the whole tournament, but even just having him win one tournament match, he's a contender. That means that at a minimum, the Miz is somebody that can lose any match. I did keep the Miz out of my entire tournament for similar reasons as yourself. I did also think about it in a sense. Miz could be on my second week bracket, but I want him to really be selling those Bronson injuries. I want Miz off TV for a little bit to a point where he won't be in the tournament. And also, in turn, that tournament match that would maybe be filled by the Miz is filled by the guy that stopped the Miz, and that is Bronson Reed. I'm involving that feud in this tournament. My matchup to take place would be Bronson versus Braun. But before I even get into my winner, I do want to go back to Miz and Dunn. Having Dunn go over, who does Dunn face next in the tournament?
He would face the winner of my final match,
Your
which I
final
haven't
match.
said yet.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, that's what I had thought. Just wanted to make sure. The winner of Braun versus Bronson would go on to face Ludwig in my bracket, and I would have that be Braun Strowman, actually. Now, I would have it be, in a sense, maybe even a DQ. Bronson outside the ring, kicking the crap out of Braun, one way or another, one tsunami too many. Ref rings the bell. Not a knockout, but a DQ, something, something, something. There's always some screwy way you can make it happen. That is my only, like, not clean finish out of the tournament. I think every other match could go kind of clean until you get maybe into the next bracket and there's some Sheamus Ludwig maybe involvement somewhere. But I think you have Braun go over. And then in the following week, it's Braun versus Ludwig. Now, this is going to lead right into my first match of the next bracket, just because they kind of tie in together. Now you've got a heel versus a face and Ludwig versus Braun. Bronson lost the match via DQ. Maybe he feels he should have won via KO. Too many tsunamis. There's no real DQ for that. It wasn't. There's no 5 count on something like that. Bronson comes out again. Maybe even attacks Ludwig first, giving the DQ win to Ludwig, kicks the absolute shit out of Braun. Ludwig gets out of there unscathed. Now you got Ludwig going into the final, continues the Braun Bronson feud without the title.
So your then second round matches are Ludwig, Braun Strowman, and the other one was
Sheamus versus Rey Mysterio.
gotcha. So I completely agree. I actually could see them doing that in some aspect where maybe their match on Monday doesn't end where they keep fighting outside. Ref rings the bell, can't get a
Mm-hmm.
winner, whatever. I could see Bronson gets DQ'd, and then in a match where Strowman's facing Ludwig, maybe it's when Ludwig is going to do his run around dropkick. Maybe it's when Strowman's going to do his train run, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I could absolutely envision Bronson Reed doing that run and like body. I don't even know what you call it. Where like the
Splash. Yeah.
yeah, like the standing splash or whatever, where you kind
Yeah.
of collide into the
Yeah.
person. Doing that to Ludwig. Ludwig rolls out whatever is gone, and
Mm-hmm.
then he handles business with Braun Strowman, and it gets wet
Yep.
with a whole lot of tsunamis. I can absolutely
Oh, yeah.
see logically how that would play
I
out.
think, and again, I want Ludwig to then win my match against Braun, putting Ludwig in the final. And I think it sets up Ludwig for a good heelish win against an injured Braun Strowman. He gets attacked again, even perhaps. How else should a heel win going into the finals of an IC title tournament? Nobody, none of the fans, none of the kids are going to want to see Ludwig win. I think you got to get him in this final match.
Completely agree. My final match in the first round. One guy you have in your second round, I
Okay.
also will have in my second round. and that is Rey Mysterio.
Interesting.
His opponent, though, this is where I debated a few people. I first thought about Carlito.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, a Ray Carlito match, especially with Carlito being heel, makes sense. It's like, I Ray Dom, no, doesn't make sense here. And Dom's obviously going to be in another story,
Yeah.
continuing at this point. So this is kind of where I struggled a little bit. And it ended up being a bit of a throwaway. I know they've kind of feuded in the past, but this is where I slid in Karrion Cross.
Okay.
And a guy who can eat the pin, doesn't really matter. Fans don't necessarily care for him. I personally like Karrion Cross,
Me too.
but this more so was about Rey Mysterio needs to win his first round match. Who can he beat? And it be somewhat of a one off where we don't need this to then develop into some other story, whatever. So that's where I landed on Karrion Cross. My only internal gripe or internal worry about doing it, again, like I mentioned, these two matches were like no story involved. That does feel like a match where it would then lead to a story, which is
Hmm.
not going to happen because they would have the same exact feud at that point.
There's nothing else to feud about.
So that was my only issue with putting Ray in. I left out Chad Gable too. Maybe that's where you slide in Chad Gable and like the Wyatt Six call costs him. I don't know. I'm going to play it like safe and say Cross, but I feel like there's someone better that I could put in this spot.
So there could be. I mean, I think keeping similarly, we kept Judgment Day off the card, both of us. We both similarly have kept Wyatt Six and the American Made Stable off the card. And again, similar to like I said prior about New Day and Cross, like they're all feuds that don't need to be in this tournament and could go on outside of the tournament to fill up Raw. Again, you get a more full episode of the show. There are some other names that are maybe available on Raw. I wrote down a couple of names that I just did not use to reference back at. I did very much debate at a point involving the New Day, but I was going to involve Odyssey Jones, but I ended
Mm.
up keeping him off the card. I almost put him against Cross at a point, and maybe there would be some involvement with New Day there. But again, I didn't want every match to have some sort of DQ involvement, something tied in. So I decided to keep them all off. I think that match makes sense, though. I think just a Ray versus Cross match puts Ray over. Again, kind of filler, maybe, but not every match has to be super involved. Raw is maybe short a little bit on heels for a tournament, is the problem in getting Ray on the card.
Speaking of Odyssey Jones, though,
Mm-hmm.
I left him out because I kind of went backwards. I
Mm-hmm.
had my winner, I had a few people that I wanted to get on, and I worked my way backwards in making the tournament. I left him out because I wasn't going to have him win, and I couldn't think of a way to put him in and have him lose with, you know,
Yes. Yeah,
screwy
exactly.
finish, whatever. I would not be shocked if Odyssey Jones won this tournament
Mm-hmm.
in if they actually had him in and he won.
Mm-hmm.
Because for someone, when you're doing a tournament, we mentioned before about sometimes you just have a one-off match and that's a number one contender. A lot of times those matches are, oh, here's three former Intercontinental champions. Winner will face Bronson Reed, whatever. Odyssey Jones is so new, and we know he's a powerhouse. We
Mm-hmm.
see the potential, but he needs the credibility of having multiple wins to get a title shot. It would not be surprising if he were to one be in this tournament, but two also win the tournament
Mm-hmm.
because that is how you logically can give him a title match and build his credibility.
Absolutely. I actually think having Odyssey win the tournament and then face Braun would be fantastic. Odyssey in just a few weeks is getting pretty over and he's looking good. Listen, we haven't maybe seen him in a while in like a legit match. So we would see. But if there's somebody to put him in there with, man, I know Braun is also pretty fresh, but it could be Braun. If Odyssey goes on to win the whole tournament, puts on a great match with Braun Breaker, loses that match to Braun, it does nothing but put Odyssey over with the fans. It's not going to hurt him at all. It would only do wonders. gets Braun over as a bigger heel for stopping the big baby face, the monster of a guy in Odyssey. I think that would be great. I do want to mention just another wild card that I left off the tournament. Um, an honorable mention, per se, in my opinion, to even win the entire tournament. If they were healthy, I have Ivar winning this entire tournament.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
If he's healthy, I have Ivar. And I don't know his timetable for return off the top of my head. But if he were even surprised, return healthy, that is a great guy that has put on some great singles matches ever since his tag partner has been injured as well. And him versus Braun would be a stellar matchup, again, to help Braun get over defeating a big beast in Ivar.
You
Am I
have
mistaken? He's injured, right?
He is. I
Yeah,
believe
okay.
it's his back or his neck.
Okay.
It's like a serious injury, but
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
been gone for a hot minute now.
yeah.
I mean, he was what last in NXT when he
Yep, for a
faced
bit.
Oba.
Oba.
Did he face Oba? Did that match
I do
happen?
think.
I think it
Ooh,
happened,
did
but
it?
on NXT TV. I don't think it was a pay-per-view.
Yeah, that might have been one I missed. In all honesty, but I do recall the feud. Obviously, I remember seeing him come out as wearing street clothes. It's a little different for Ivar.
Yeah.
But he's been great, man. He really is, and it's a shame, not in a bad way, that he's kind of locked into a tag team, because he could go on a singles run, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's taken advantage of ever since Eric Rowan got injured, elevating himself.
Who?
Or not Eric Rowan, Eric Rowe. Is that his name?
Well, he's just Eric in
Oh, okay.
WWE, but yes, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
the Eagles used to have a cornerback named Eric Rowe. So when I said it, I was like, wait, no, that's the Eagles corner who went to the Dolphins.
But you know what that sounds like?
What?
Excuses.
Wait. When? When did I ask for your opinion? No, but he completely took advantage of you get a chance. And for when that happened, I thought
hmm
we're just not going to see him on TV. I was like, up,
Yeah,
he's going to be going,
agreed.
whatever. It's just such like they were such a tag
You
team.
never thought you'd see him single stars. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And he's made himself where, I mean, been a little forgotten about because he's been hurt. But
hmm
him versus Braun Breaker, I mean, that
Money,
is if he
money.
were healthy,
That's a money
I would
match.
have him win that tournament tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And I like with Ivar too that in this singles run they've gone a little bit more. I know in NXT, but more casual with him. I think again he is tied to a tag team. It's hard to think of them separately. And like, listen, the Viking gimmick, all that. I know we got this whole Wyatt Six thing going on, but I think we are a bit past the like really gimmicky stuff in wrestling. I think he could go a bit lesser with it and be more over. Hell, he's put on enough great matches on Raw in the last few months when he was healthy and just through his little NXT stint that he deserves a mid card title run. He was really filling the show with some great matches and maybe isn't getting the credit he deserves.
Yeah, and just like off the top of my head, you're him and Bronson Reed had fantastic matches.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys on Raw, if he were to come back, Odyssey Jones, Bronson Reed, Braun Strowman,
Big guys.
and then you got Braun Breaker, who may be smaller, but is
Mm-hmm.
fast and strong.
You still
And
got guys like Sheamus.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Any combination with
Otis.
all of those guys, Otis, any combination with them, I mean, we've said it plenty of times off air how much the mid card titles have been elevated under Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
This is where really, I mean, obviously the Intercontinental Championship was fantastic under Gunther. Sami
Mm-hmm.
Zayn, a credible guy, beats him. You don't need to establish the title because the title, it's all about the person who has it. This is
Mm-hmm.
where it's like both are singles champions. They got prizes, and there's a whole pool of people going from. And
Yeah.
that is an insane crop of talent.
It is an insane crop of talent, and it's just fantastic what we could come up with, even just fantasy booking a tournament, because there's so many options and avenues that can go that are all really great. There's really no bad way to determine any of the matches we've even made up. But to get back to those, I did briefly touch on my final matches being Ray versus Sheamus and Ludwig versus Braun Strowman in which I have Ludwig go over Braun. Again, an injured Braun, maybe from a post match attack from Bronson the week prior. Maybe Bronson comes out again, costs Braun the match. Ludwig gets the win. That's one of my finals for the tournament. But I want to hear from you. Who's winning your first final matchup or
So my
second
first
final
final
matchup?
matchup would be the matchups at this point. It's Kofi versus
Mm-hmm.
Ludwig, and it's Pete Dunne versus Rey Mysterio. And I'm sure you, with us having such similar minds, already know what my finals would be with those given four.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm having Ludwig beat Kofi. As I mentioned before, talking the whole Woods thing, maybe that's where Woods would officially turn on Kofi. Maybe that's where Woods inadvertently costs Kofi or something along those lines. Maybe Woods and Odyssey Jones are ringside and they start arguing during Kofi's match and it distracts him and Ludwig gets
Mm-hmm.
up, whatever. I know it's a matchup we've seen before, but again, it is not something where Ludwig and Kofi will then go on to a feud. This will enhance the Kofi and Woods feud, but gets Ludwig into the finals where I placed him. And like I said, when I knew my winner, I knew my finals, and I worked backwards. This is where the working backwards part comes into play. I knew I wanted Ludwig in the finals.
Yep.
How do I get him there? Okay, I have this option, and how can it be logical to enhance their story? So that's how I did it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Ludwig, similarly, as I said, got to be in the finals. You got to get him in there. I think it's perfect for him. And there is a few ways you could do it. I do think that's another solid way to just get Ludwig in there. I have Ludwig in the finals again. Prior week, maybe the same week, maybe even earlier in the night, we have Sheamus versus Rey Mysterio. Another face versus face matchup. Two veterans. Crowd's gonna want either guy to go over. Can't really decide who you want to win. Ray really doesn't have involvement with anyone. I think this is where you have Ludwig screw Sheamus, so he doesn't have to face Sheamus. He then gets Rey Mysterio in the final. Ludwig versus Rey Mysterio is your final matchup. This final match is where I thought we would align the most. I thought we would have the same final matchup. In all honesty, I think we're going the same direction here. But again, there is many ways you could have done this final match, but I think this makes the most sense is Ludwig Kaiser versus Rey Mysterio.
So my last semifinal would be Ray versus Pete Dunne, and I would have Ray win.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a matchup where it feels Ray and Pete aren't going into a long term story from it. You can just have Ray beat Pete Dunne, and Pete's already got this rivalry with Trick Williams, still
Yeah.
somewhat with Sheamus, whatever. Like he, storyline wise, has things to occupy him anyway,
Mm-hmm.
setting up the same exact finals between Rey Mysterio and Ludwig Kaiser. To do a little bit of a callback to the start of the podcast, this is exactly what I was saying, where I feel like I kind of played it safe with a logical outcome. And as we were going, and we're fantasy booking, we're just throwing things out there. You start thinking of how good potential matchups between Braun Breaker and even Otis, Braun
Mm-hmm.
Breaker and you know
Odyssey.
Odyssey Jones, like literally anybody, Braun Breaker and anybody that
Me.
we've mentioned. Exactly. Like you start thinking of it and it's like, man, there's so many options. But that's the beauty of Braun Breaker being new to the main roster and there being some other new guys like Odyssey
Resh.
Jones, where almost everything is a fresh
Mm-hmm.
matchup. So to like play devil's advocate to myself, I know it's the safe route, but there's nothing wrong with it where those other guys aren't going anywhere. So as
Yeah.
awesome as if Ivar is healthy, Ivar versus Braun Breaker is, that can still happen. This is not like their only chance to do so. All of these matchups are completely fresh, which is the beauty of having someone so new and so good hold a championship.
For sure. Again, I think to touch on them also just doing a tournament too, it gives you the ability to not have Braun Breaker, sorry, wrestle every week. You don't have to keep him off TV, but he doesn't have to have a match this week, next week, maybe even that third week, and that's okay. spread out the Braun Breaker matches. He's a sight to see right now for WWE. I want to see him wrestle. And yes, he's a new, fresh, young talent. He should not be on some part time schedule. That's not at all what I'm saying. You don't have to have these champions wrestle every week. If you have him face Ray on Monday and then he faces Ilya the next week and Sheamus the next week, those are three great matchups you could have had on three PLEs, three bigger shows. And you could do that. You could have him face these guys on Raw, but that would almost more so indicate a shorter Intercontinental title feud for me. And again, I think they're going to have Braun Breaker on a little bit of a run, which leads me to bring up my final match, in which I'll even go ahead and say Braun Breaker goes over. Braun Breaker is retained in the title here, but I want him to. I want him to get a lot of names under his belt. And one of those names is Rey Mysterio. A great face, the biggest face of all time, obviously an incredible talent. Everybody loves Rey Mysterio. Would be a fantastic matchup. Rey can still go like nobody ever could before at his age. It's unbelievable to see him still in the ring. We had seen Rey Mysterio up close live a few years ago, just before his WWE return. And I know it's a matter of years ago, but he was as speedy as he was 15 years prior to that. It's crazy. Rey versus Braun would put on an incredible match. Rey versus Ludwig, though, the finals of the tournament, I think it's very, very easy. The week prior, you had Ludwig screw Sheamus in the match against Rey. I think if you have a moment where Rey isn't paying attention, Ludwig screws Sheamus, Rey gets the win without knowing Sheamus was cheated. Triple H has been very good on logic, using logic in feuds. I don't think it's outlandish to say later on in the night, we get a backstage segment of Sheamus pissed and Rey apologizing. Sorry, Sheamus. I didn't see Ludwig come out, whatever. Just to kind of keep them as cordial faces because Rey didn't screw Sheamus, Ludwig did. Now you got the finals, Rey versus Ludwig. Ludwig, maybe he's about to go do the double knee into the stairs. He's about to murder Rey Mysterio, as Cole would probably say. Sheamus comes out, makes the save. Rey Mysterio gets the win. You now have the setup of Ludwig versus Sheamus in Berlin, hopefully. I know the final being Rey versus Ludwig is probably past that, to be fair. But I would hope that match gets set up for Berlin. I think it's so easy, too, because now they've cost each other title matches. It's kind of more of a blood feud. So I get it makes sense for Bad Blood, too. But it's so easy in Germany to do like a Lederhosen bar brawl or something between the two of them, like just do something crazy. But regardless, Rey goes over. Braun Breaker versus Rey is the Intercontinental title match.
I too have Rey beating Ludwig, faces Braun Breaker. I have the timeline a little bit farther down, so that match is it a main event of Raw? Possibly. To me, that's like it's the main event, but not the last segment type match.
Mm-hmm.
It's that happens as the last match, and then Punk closes the show or something like that.
Yeah.
Before Bad Blood, whatever it may be. That's what that type of match feels for me between Rey and Ludwig. And then Rey and Braun Breaker, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. It is establish the credibility more of Braun Breaker, give him a legend, give him another head for the totem pole. But the match is going to be good itself. Like you don't have
Yep.
to, it's not like a matchup where some legend is so over the hill. Like Rey can go better than people that are 20 years younger than him. Like he can
Absolutely.
still go. The match will be fine. My only wonder is would it be a match where you have that tournament, you have them face, Braun Breaker wins, and then that's it? Or Braun Breaker wins and they somehow end up facing again. Maybe he, attacks Rey after the match or whatever. Rey tries to be respectful and establish Braun as an even more heel. That's my only thing where Braun Breaker would beat Rey in this aspect, but having it be more than one match probably would be, you'd have to get a little creative in doing so compared to if he faces, say, like an Odyssey Jones. Man, you could go a million ways with that first
Mm-hmm.
match to set up a rematch, you name it. But I too have Rey winning and facing Braun Breaker at Bad Blood in Atlanta with all the dogs out.
With all the dogs out. So I will comment on that, on a potential furthering of a Rey Mysterio Braun Breaker feud, which do I need it? Not necessarily, to be honest. I think Rey is like the perfect name to just one time take the L to Braun, get that head on the wall, bring him to the taxidermist, put him on the totem pole, like you said. There's a lot of guys that we love to see do that. I love seeing these champions just get names under their belt. But I don't think it's outlandish to say maybe Braun, during the match, after the match, maybe he takes out the LWO. Maybe he gives Ray one more spear after the match or the next following night on Raw, 2 nights later, whenever the show is. And maybe he doesn't get a follow up match with Ray because he beat Ray clean 1-on-1. But maybe we see the return of a newer face again with Dragon Lee. And maybe
Mm.
that leads into a Dragon Lee Braun Breaker feud.
Oh, I like that a lot. I think
Yeah,
he hasn't been on because he had a child, correct? I think that's what I
yeah,
saw.
I want to say so. I'm not entirely sure as to what's been holding him off TV, but he's fantastic. I think he is the maybe best masked wrestler we've had in WWE since Rey Mysterio, and I think there's a lot of potential there for him. And again, I don't need him to go over Braun here, but they would put on a clinic. They would be putting on must see TV, to be honest.
Yeah, that match would be fantastic. The only thing I was wondering while you were talking lastly about just a one off, I can't fully remember when Ray faced Gunther for the title.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a one off? I feel like it was. I feel
I
like they
think it
didn't face.
was.
I feel like it was a one match on a SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
I could be remembering completely wrong. To be fair, Gunther did hold the title for like 2 years, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah. It's a
it's not
while.
it's not the easiest to completely remember every
Fought back.
single week of his title
Mm-hmm.
reign. But I think in that aspect, it would be very similar to how you book Braun Breaker and Ray. I know Gunther and Ray wasn't a 6 month feud. I know that
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So I would go the similar route with Braun Breaker. Now, I don't want a carbon copy of Gunther's title reign for Braun Breaker, and I think
Correct.
you've already kind of established that with how he faced Sami Zayn,
Mm-hmm.
lost, won, then wins the 2 out of 3 falls match, taking a pin in the 2 out of 3 falls match. Like this already feels different than
Mm-hmm.
Gunther's however many day reign.
Yeah, so let me just off the back of that, let me hit you with another follow up question. You could book it out at Bad Blood, or you can book it out at Mania 45. When he loses, who does Braun Breaker lose that title to?
It feels like Ilya makes the most sense
Mm-hmm.
from how it all started. But again, it's like, then why wouldn't Ilya get into this tournament?
Mm-hmm.
What like it's how does Ilya get back on TV? Because he had an appearance for when Sami Zayn was facing Braun Breaker in the rematch.
Mm-hmm.
Ilya shows up, and then all right, now it's been a week or two, and he's hasn't been back. Still hasn't wrestled a match since his last match. But it feels like logically that's who the person would be.
Mm-hmm.
I think then the next person you probably turn to, I'm like laughing while saying this, is probably Cena.
Yeah, I knew that name was coming, and I'm a little indifferent on Cena. And listen, I get it. It's John Cena. Love John Cena. I don't think everybody needs to be a Grand Slam champion and this and that.
Agreed.
I think an IC title run in his wildly, forcedly announced retirement tour would be forced. It would be a little
Mhm.
forced. I would rather him get the 17th title than even touch a mid card title match, to be honest. But I can't rule it out as a possibility. I do also think Ilya kind of makes the most sense, but it's tough. It is almost a little early to tell. There's nobody that right now I could pick to be the guy, even if it was 10, 11, 12 months from now. I do like the idea, but he's kind of borderlining like this face heel thing right now. I do kind of like the idea of it maybe being a Pete Dunne. I think
Mm.
that's an interesting one. You had kind of booked Pete Dunne again to win a match in this tournament, establish him with some credibility a bit more. Maybe way down the line, if he can organically get over like we've seen him do before, maybe he's the perfect candidate.
And to be fair, I don't think anybody would have predicted that Gunther's title reign would end to Sami Zayn. that didn't, I mean, it felt like for sure. I'm sure there was a few other moments where other people had a chance, but Chad Gable was like the first sure one. Oh, this is the guy who's going to take the title off of him.
Mm,
Ends up not being him, and it ends up being Sami Zayn, which did not seem logical or possible for most of Gunther's title reign.
yeah.
So to be fair, the person who beats Braun Breaker might not even be on the main roster right now. Not saying Braun Breaker is going to have a 500 some odd day reign and they're going to have this title with him for that long, but I don't think it's going to be a 2 month reign. I don't think it's going to be a 3 month reign. I think there's going to be some length to it.
Yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of length to it as well. Ooh, sorry. I think it's interesting. You're not going to do a 600-day reign. You just did it with Gunther. You're probably not going to do a 30, 60-day reign. You just kind of did it with Sammy. So you're kind of in the middle there, I guess. I'm all for either. He could lose the title at Bad Blood. I'd rather see him hold it a bit longer, again, establish him a bit more. But again, he's so young. I do think Triple H runs it a bit differently than maybe Vince did in his later years, where it means a lot to have a title run under your belt. The days it isn't maybe the biggest thing anymore. You look at guys like Triple H with 14 titles, Orton, Cena, Flair. We mentioned Miz earlier has 9 titles. You know, a lot of these guys that we've seen in the last 10, 15 years don't necessarily have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 championship runs under their belt, except those forced Vince guys, the Brock Lesnar's, the Romans, you know, even guys that have been over forever. Seth only has a couple under his belt. Finn's only got one, you know. So I think we're maybe entering this world now where Cody is another great example of somebody that will probably lose the belt at some point, but will get it back eventually. He will have multiple title runs before his career is over.
Yeah, and this is the thing with Braun Breaker is we know he's going to have multiple title runs that aren't the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah.
He's going to have multiple title runs with the title that's to your left, the World Heavyweight Championship. So it's for him, it's also kind of a point where he is not at that main event level yet, but we know he will be. And it's more so let's enjoy this Intercontinental title reign for what it is now, because it is very similar to, again, Gunther's title reign, where we all knew this is awesome, this is great. As soon as he drops this title, it's going to be a very short stint of him not having a title, and then he's going directly for the world or WWE championship. So that's where it kind of feels with Braun Breaker. When he drops the Intercontinental Championship, and who knows, he might win it back again or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. When he officially drops it, it's going to be a very short bridge to him then being in the main event scene, whether it be on Raw or SmackDown.
Absolutely. He is going to transition very quickly, just like Gunther. It's crazy to think because they got a lot of guys in that kind of bubble right now. Gunther, Braun, Ilya's another one that could do so. Carmelo, you know, these guys could win mid card titles, tag titles, get long runs, but they're all guys that are ready to transition to that main card already. So one mid title run, right to the world title picture. You know, it really is that simple. But I love seeing the wealth get spread around a little bit. You know, I do want to see a lot of these new guys hold a plethora of titles. It is nice. You don't want to force titles off people, but it is nice to see in the long runs of their career, Braun Breaker, the 5-time IC champion, 3-time tag titles, 7-time world heavyweight, won the Rumble, won this. Not everybody needs every accolade, but it is good to see those things.
Completely agreed. Braun Breaker is 1000% a guy that at some point 15 years from now there's going to be a little graphic and it's going to say guess this wrestler by career paths, and it's going
Yeah,
to be,
yeah.
2 NXT
Mm-hmm.
titles, then NXT tag title, then the
Mm-hmm.
Intercontinental title, and then probably a world or WWE championship
Yeah.
4 or 5 times. 1000%
Mm-hmm.
he's on that path. We are on the path to making more videos, more podcasts. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, go over to our YouTube channel. If you are on our YouTube channel, go over to our Apple and Spotify. Like, share, subscribe, notifications on. comment in any aspect. We are what now? 3 weeks into doing this,
Hmm.
4 podcasts, but 3 weeks, and there is no slowing down in the near future. As the shows get bigger, our videos get bigger. So Snowden, we fooled them again. We got him to listen again. We fooled them again.
Not gonna lie, it's too easy out here. Fooled them again. Light work. We got them this time. C2 Wrestling, we're coming at you hot. As you said, like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on TikTok. We got a lot of stuff coming your way. A lot of great stuff coming. You know, we got a NXT No Mercy card on the way. That should be pretty good. You know, TNA crossing over. Joe Hendrick in the title match should be a good one. Obviously, Bash in Berlin is coming up. Again, as you mentioned previously, we got our first ever AEW All Elite Wrestling video coming at you pretty soon. So keep your eyes open, keep your ears out. You'll be seeing us soon.
Or
C2
listening to
Wrestling
us if
or
you're
Wrestling.
on
Yeah, yeah.
Spotify and Apple. But that's it. And Snowden, I'm juiced for SmackDown now. I'm already
Oh
I'm ready for
yeah,
SmackDown.
yeah. I'm not gonna. You want us to do another podcast after this?
Yeah,
I'm ready. Yeah.
let's just go another hour. Just talk about
Yeah.
our day.
Yeah.
All right,
All
we'll
right.
catch you guys next time.